Dalibor Rohek, a research fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, said at a time of heightened crisis the EU is woefully lacking in military might without Donald Trump's backing, and pointed out European nations are continually failing to pay their way. Mr. Rohek said, former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright called America the indispensable nation. With Donald Trump in the White House, Europeans have been acutely reminded of just how true that characterization is. Unfortunately, they've done very little in the past years to prepare for a world in which America is unable or unwilling to play that role. Writing in Politico, Mr. Rohek attacked Europe for relying on Washington to take action when Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons on his own people in 2013, and for doing nothing when then U.S. President Obama decided not to. EU nations depend too much on the U.S. to do its military dirty work, according to an expert. Former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright called America the indispensable nation. With Donald Trump in the White House, Europeans have been acutely reminded of just how true that characterization is. Dalibor Rohek, the expert, said the EU is cruelly exposed on its eastern side, with an increasingly aggressive Vladimir Putin poised. He said, if a U.S. administration ever walks away from the security guarantees extended to its NATO allies, the statehood of a dozen small countries could be at stake. Mr. Rohek also took aim at the EU's head of diplomacy, Federica Mogherini, saying she lacks both the political mandate and personal clout that her position needs. And national leaders, with the exception of French President Emmanuel Macron, show little interest in preparing the bloc for the challenges of an era that is likely to lack U.S. leadership, and are ineffective in building a relationship with Mr. Trump. Mr. Rohek added, if the world's indispensable nation retires from its present role, Europe will not fill its shoes. The degree of political coherence needed to play that role is absent. Getty. Mr. Rohek attacked Europe for relying on Washington to take action. Germany's unwillingness to dedicate more significant resources to defense poses a huge problem, Mr. Rucksack went on. His scathing comments come weeks after Germany's defense ministry warned Berlin might have to axe an international arms project. The ministry announced the planned €2.5 billion increase next year was insufficient, considering the massive need to modernize the Bundeswehr, Germany's unified armed forces, and their civil administration and procurement authorities. Defense chiefs will have to scrap at least one big international arms project in 2019 if a greater increase in budget negotiations is not secured. This comes as U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly criticized Germany for not contributing enough to NATO defense and for free-riding on Washington's military budget. In talks with Chancellor Angela Merkel in Washington last month, Mr. Trump said, we are protecting Europe and yet we pay far more than anybody else. Federica Mogherini lacks both the political mandate and personal clout her position needs. There has been growing concern about the poor state of the Bundeswehr after decades of underfunding. A recent report from Parliament's Armed Forces Commissioner discovered that the operational readiness of Germany's military equipment was dramatically low. The report states not one of Germany's 6 submarines is in use and, at times, not a single A400M transport aircraft could fly. German military spending is due to increase by nearly 13% in the next 4 years, from €38.9 billion this year to €43.9 billion in 2022, Finance Ministry officials revealed last month. Last year, Germany's defense spending stood at only 1.24% of GDP. Ms. Merkel announced after her discussion with Mr. Trump that the ratio would rise to 1.3% in 2019, but experts predict it will fall to 1.25% in the next 3 years. EU wants America to do its military dirty work, then it whinges from the sideline. No wonder Trump has little time for it.